These are the top scorers in Premier League history, their height, and the recorded number of headed goals that they have scored. The list at the top looks pretty much as you'd expect. Crouch, Giroud, Kane. Then there's this little guy, Tim Cahill, barely measuring 5'10", posting a very respectable total. Now, watch what happens to this graph when we switch to headed goal percentage. He's in a genuine league of his own when it comes to this stat, which is remarkable when you consider his size and the size of those around him. 55% of his goals in the Premier League were headers. 6'7" Peter Crouch is the only player within touching distance. How did this relatively diminutive attacking midfielder dominate the Premier League aerially on his way to brutalising corner flags around the country? When you look up any article, retrospective, or interview with Tim Cahill, they will nearly always attribute his ability in the air to his ability to jump. This prevailing narrative isn't necessarily untrue. He certainly had an impressive vertical leap. There's a handful of goals where he was able to climb the ladder and beat a centre-back. But we're not talking about insane Cristiano Ronaldo style jumps here, where he's just cleanly winning the ball over centre-backs' heads. He said it himself.
Now, if I'm playing against John Terry, I don't want this ball diagonal at all, because the percentages are I'm not going to win it and they're not going to get the knockdowns.
So, reducing Tim Cahill's aerial prowess to being a simple matter of a small man who could jump really high is doing him a bit of a disservice. I'd say that there's been a handful of players, roughly his height, who could match his vertical, and they're not close to putting up his numbers. Instead, it was a mastery of several more mundane elements of the game, built on top of his explosiveness, that led to him being so dangerous in the air, paradoxically making him a far more interesting player than if he was just a little guy with superhuman leaping abilities. This goal wasn't in the Premier League, but it's one of the most impressive goals that I've ever seen, full stop, even if it doesn't necessarily grab your attention on the first watch. Notice anything? He's literally jumping in the air for a potential flick-on from Nikita Jelavic before it's even happened, and then nodding it home. It's an absolutely ridiculous job of reading the game. He jumped so early that on first viewing, I thought that he had to be going for the original cross and simply got lucky. But with the original cross's trajectory, it only makes sense that he's jumped in anticipation for the 1 in 100 chance that the flick made its way to him. This slightly blurry angle on the replay shows his movement off perfectly. As soon as he realises that Jelavic is likely to get the flick on, he's darting forward and timing his leap. And I don't think I've ever seen another goal quite like it. Never mind the actual aerial ability to hang and contort in reaction to the flick on and get it into the back of the net. Ask Cahill himself why he was so good in the air, and the first word out of his mouth is timing. I'm going to pair it together with anticipation as one of the key skills in his arsenal. I think the best example of this ironically comes from a goal that wasn't even a header. Look at his position here compared to the defenders when his teammate pokes this shot towards goal. Somehow, he's the first to anticipate the rebound, get on the end of it and bundle it into the back of the net, with this defender in particular having a shocker. When you watch him, he's always switched on, looking for a scoring opportunity. A good chunk of his goals came from quick set pieces where the defence has completely switched off, and he's always making dangerous runs in anticipation of a cross that's being put into an area for him to nail his timing and attack it. How often do you see a player loop a header like this harmlessly over the bar, when it's just missed a teammate or defender in front of them who jumped for the ball but didn't connect? You'll often get the feeling that the attacker never really expected the ball to reach them. Tim Cahill, on the other hand, every single time attacked the ball like he was expecting it to come to him. As a result, he got 4 or 5 goals in the air that you just don't see very often. Getting your head to the ball is one thing. Finding a way to guide it from there into the back of the net is the skill that truly matters. There's such a variety in the types of headed goal that he was able to score, using all parts of his head and every kind of header possible in order to provide the correct finish. whether it needed the faintest of touches or a flying, diving effort to send it back where it came from. It's not just the unorthodox headers that showed off his technique either. The power and direction that he could generate can be clearly seen with his more traditional finishes too, the ball often flying past the keeper before they could even react. I don't think I've ever seen a player talk about heading in as much detail as I have with Tim Cahill. He goes into his plans for heading in wet weather, where he'd look to bounce his headers into the ground so that they'd skid past the keeper, compared to his plan to keep the ball aerial in dry weather. His video scouting and pre-match prep to go up against different centre-backs, or the dynamics of heading an in-swinging corner versus an out-swinger. None of this is going to be unique only to Tim Cahill, and he's probably asked about heading more than basically any other player in history because of his prowess, but it does show that there's a lot more going on than simply a big jump. It's easy to fall into a trap when you watch someone rise for a header of thinking that the outcome is a bit random, a more primitive event on the football pitch with less control than a dainty chip over an onrushing keeper or a curling placed finish from 20 yards. All you need to do to counter those thoughts is to watch a few clips of Tim Cahill leaping, straining his neck muscles, and finding the back of the net in whatever way was necessary. This one's pretty straightforward and can be seen in every facet of his game. Despite the focus of this video, Tim Cahill also had to contribute to the game in other ways outside of headers. He was a very capable, hard-nosed midfielder, a bit old school in terms of how he flew around the pitch. He played for Millwall for 6 years when he first came to England, after all, learning from the prototypical small / no-nonsense / nasty / brave / dirty / tenacious midfielder in Dennis Wise, who featured as player manager during his time there. Choose your own adjective depending on your view of the player in question. Suffice to say, Cahill was happy to put himself wholeheartedly into any challenge, especially when there was the potential of scoring a goal. This header against Manchester United is a good illustration. You can't convince me that this fullback, who I'm 99% sure is Patrice Evra, couldn't jump as high as Tim Cahill here and compete for the header. Look at the way he goes at the ball though. He's not committed at all, bordering on scared in the challenge. Cahill, on the other hand, flies in and gets there just before either defender to nod home. It's not fancy or flashy, but a desire to score and bravery in the air are key traits that help to make him as dangerous as he was. You also can't ignore the fact that Cahill was in the right place at the right time. He had a manager who was tactically astute enough to make the most of his abilities, playing a style of football that played into his strengths. David Moyes made heavy use of overlapping fullbacks and long balls in this period with Everton. Stephen Pienaar linking up with Leighton Baines, who used his wand of a left foot to supply Cahill for much of his time at the club. Arteta was also there to produce high-quality dead ball deliveries. Cahill was also paired with other aerial threats like Fellaini and whatever big tall striker the Moyes could produce from the transfer market, stopping teams from focusing too many resources to defending Cahill in the air. It was also a strong Everton team that could fight for the top 4 and score a good amount of goals, but who couldn't afford to splash the cash for elite midfielders like the clubs above them, players who may have been able to come in and give a serious push for first team minutes, or have Moyes considering a less direct attacking philosophy. If he played 10 or so years later, with how tactics evolved, or even if he had played on another team during the same time period, it's easy to imagine Tim Cahill contributing considerably fewer headers to the cause. I'm counting this as a slightly different ability to his vertical jump. There is a lot of overlap though, so I'll keep it short. This is basically everything else about the jump apart from the height. He had a great ability to stay strong in the air, fighting off challenges. He was elite at what could be described as the dark arts of heading, where he would use a defender for leverage, holding them down and preventing them from getting a jump with an outstretched arm while getting a little extra spring for himself in the process. In reality, That's something that's done by every single player on every single cross in the Premier League. Cahill was just better than most. Welcome to the fun corner of interesting facts and talking points that didn't fit anywhere else in the video. I thought there might be a couple of players who just missed my goals threshold who might be able to beat out Cahill's headed goal percentage, Andy Carroll chief among them, but he only slots in behind Carragher in third. You have to go all the way down to the set-piece threat defenders like John Terry at 68% to find someone who can beat his percentage. I'm not sure if it's because he got a lot of chances from being in and around the box for crosses so often, but Cahill loved a good volley or overhead kick. Obviously, there's the infamous goal at the World Cup against the Netherlands, to pair with a beauty against Chelsea, and a few other examples where he just absolutely mullers the ball. Everton fans will know this, but I had forgotten how badly they got done by the ref in their matchup with Villarreal in the Champions League qualifiers in 2005. Transfermarkt seems to be the only publicly available stats page tracking headed goals, and they are only consistently doing so from about 2005 onwards, so I had to exclude a good chunk of older Premier League players who had the majority of their goals marked as uncategorised. Anyone who is on the list, I only calculated the headed goal percentage from the amount of goals where the type of finish was actually categorised. So Wayne Rooney's figure, for example, is calculated from the 175 tracked goals on Transfermarkt rather than his total of 208 Premier League goals, as that's a much fairer, true representation of his headed goals percentage. Sadly, I couldn't go through manually and log every single Premier League goal from every single Premier League player like I was able to with Tim Cahill, but watching all of his goals did give me the benefit of realising that his headed goal percentage should be even higher, because one of the goals he scored with his feet clearly didn't cross the line. Look at the official Everton video of all his goals cheekily cutting away before this one bounces. There's a lot of weird little tidbits about Cahill. He was Everton's first Ballon d'Or nominee since Neville Southall.
Well done, he's 13.
And their last ever since then. He got sent off for this disgusting celebration after scoring his first goal in the Premier League. He got sent off as he was about to be substituted onto the pitch in a Melbourne derby, and after the final whistle against Newcastle. He had a ball boy move the corner flag in Australia so he couldn't do his celebration, did an absolutely naff sponsored celebration after scoring a goal in a World Cup playoff against Syria. In his post-footballing career, he seems mostly concerned with making money in whatever way possible, as foreshadowed by this celebration, which isn't really my cup of tea, but it's not particularly rare among footballers now, is it? This is probably going to be a recurring rant for me, but no major sports league in the world, not cricket, baseball, American football, or my local Sunday league, has a worse stats page than the Premier League. If you wanted to search directly for players with the most headed goals, then you can't. You can find the leaders for through ball completion percentage though, thank goodness. Fair enough though, it's a fairly niche stat, but then there is this one weirdly hidden page that does list Peter Crouch as the record holder for the most headed goals in Premier League history. So do they know every player's numbers? Or is this just a fairly good guess on their part? A little tilting, but I'll carry on. I'll just check how many goals Tim Cahill has scored in his career and manually search for, oh, what's that? One of the simplest statistics to track is completely wrong on the Premier League's official website for absolutely no reason. For some reason, they have Tim Cahill listed as scoring 45 goals, which is just plainly wrong. I see it time and time again when researching my videos. The official Premier League website is genuinely one of the least reliable sources for stats, which is absolutely wild. People who aren't as pedantic as me, or who don't realise, completely justifiably, how bad they can be as a source, run with the figures, and it causes complete chaos in the footballing media. The Guardian have Tim Cahill down for 21 headed goals, which I'm pretty sure is the number if you don't realise that Transfermarkt hasn't recorded every goal for Tim Cahill. The official Australian national team website weirdly has him at 22, as did Jamie Carragher's podcast, where he's actually interviewing the man himself. Sadly, Cahill either didn't know or was too polite to correct him on the stats officially and make them public record. It's something I think about a lot with the Premier League and in making these videos, about how badly a lot of the sort of preservation, bookkeeping kind of things are ran in the organisation. To me, it's just disrespectful to the sport as a whole that the multi-billion-pound organisation can't hire just one of the many football stats nerds out there to make a working, functional stats page, never mind one that's just factually incorrect half of the time. Throw it in with how it's essentially impossible to go back and watch old games from the past, and how badly they deal with copyright on YouTube, etc. And it really sends me up the wall, especially compared to something like NFL films. So on that bombshell, thanks for watching. Go follow me on woke Twitter so that I have someone who actually uses the site to talk about football with on there, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Who's the best headerer? The best headerer of the ball in your club's history? It's probably John Terry for Chelsea,